Hello and welcome to Indus News live from Islamabad. I'm Jawad Tehami and these are the headlines. In occupied Kashmir, Indian troops have martyred 2 more Kashmiris during a military raid in the Shopian district. This brings the death toll from violence by Indian forces to 10 in the last 5 days. The region has been under a curfew and communications blackout since India revoked its autonomy last year in August. Pakistan says a soldier has been martyred in fighting by terrorists from across the border with Afghanistan. The military's media wing said another soldier was wounded in the fighting, targeting a checkpost in the Bajour district. Azerbaijan says it has destroyed Armenia's ballistic missiles aimed at the civilian population in the Ganja and Mingashevir cities. Earlier, Ankara proposed a 4-way dialogue involving Turkey, Russia, Azerbaijan and Armenia. Over 500 people have been killed in the ongoing conflict over the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh since September the 27th. Kyrgyzstan's parliament has once again named Sadir Japarov as prime minister in a repeat vote. President Sooronbay Jeenbekov rejected the first vote that appointed Japarov over doubts of voting rules. Last week, Japarov's supporters got him freed from prison amid unrest over the disputed parliamentary elections. The number of coronavirus infections has exceeded 38 million worldwide, with over 1,080,000 deaths. The US, India and Brazil together account for more than half of the world's COVID-19 cases. India has reported 730 deaths and over 63,000 infections overnight, which has taken the caseload to over 7.2 million. In Pakistan, 14 more people lost their lives to the virus overnight, taking the tally to 6,601. Those were the headlines and detailed stories. Right after a short break, stay tuned. Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In occupied Kashmir, Indian troops martyred 2 more civilians in a military operation in Shopian district. This brings the death toll from violence by Indian forces to 10 in the last 5 days. Another youth was killed after he was hit by an Indian Army vehicle in Srinagar. The valley has been under a curfew and communications blackout since New Delhi stripped its autonomy in August last year. Pakistan has repeatedly called for a global action on extrajudicial killings of Kashmiris. A Pakistani soldier has been martyred by gunfire by terrorists from across the country's border with Afghanistan. Pakistan's military's media wing ISPR says terrorists fired on army's post in Bajour area. It says Havaldar Tanveer has been martyred while another soldier wounded. Islamabad has been consistently raising the issue of border management with Kabul to avoid use of Afghan soil against Pakistan. Last month, Pakistan Army warned that the cross-border violent incidents aim to derail the Afghan peace process. In Afghanistan, 5 civilians have been killed in separate blasts in western Herat and eastern Laghman provinces. A spokesperson for the Laghman governor said 17 others were wounded in the explosions. Kabul has accused the Taliban of carrying out the blasts, but no group has claimed the responsibility yet. Earlier, 9 Afghan soldiers were killed and after 2 Mi-17 helicopters crashed due to technical issues in southern Helmand province. Azerbaijan says it has destroyed Armenia's ballistic missiles aimed at civilian populations in Ganja and Mingashevir cities. More in this report.
Azeri head of Foreign Policy Affairs Hikmet Hajiev said the missiles were targeted in the occupied Kalbajar region. Azerbaijan's defense ministry said it will destroy all military facilities in Armenia which targeted civilian settlements. Azeri President Ilham Aliyev accused Armenia of trying to attack gas pipelines. The Armenian Defense Ministry denied firing on civilian targets, but said it reserved the right to target any military installations and combat movements in Azerbaijan. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow disagreed with Turkey's position on the conflict. Ankara had proposed a four-way dialogue between Turkey, Russia, Azerbaijan and Armenia to solve the conflict. While Tehran says a missile fired by the warring sides in Nagorno-Karabakh has landed in Haris County, eastern Iran. Over 500 people have been killed in the ongoing conflict since war started on September 27.
Russia has rejected U.S. claims that both the countries have agreed to extend a key arms control pact. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said Washington's claims are nothing but delusion and fraud. Ryabkov said U.S. condition that Russia frees nuclear arsenals in order to extend New START is unacceptable. He said any attempt to use the talks as a campaign tool for upcoming U.S. presidential election will be rebuffed. Earlier, U.S. Representative for Arms Control Marshall Billingsley said Washington and Moscow have reached an agreement in principle. Billingsley said the U.S. was ready to extend the New START if both the states agree to a limitation or freeze of their nuclear arsenals. Billingsley said the freeze should include short-range tactical nuclear weapons systems. China says it has lodged a complaint with Canada over Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's remarks on Hong Kong and Xinjiang. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lin said the Canadian government exhibited hypocrisy and weakness. Zhao Lin said Trudeau should not interfere in Beijing's internal affairs and focus on the issues in Canada. Earlier, Trudeau accused China of coercive diplomacy. He said Beijing's repressive measures are counterproductive for itself and the rest of the world. The U.S. has urged Turkey to end the calculated provocation by pulling back its exploratory ship from waters contested with Greece. State Department said coercion and military activities will not resolve tensions in the eastern Mediterranean. Spokesperson Morgan Ortagus also called upon Ankara to immediately begin exploratory talks with Athens. Earlier, Germany's Foreign Minister Heiko Maas criticized Turkey for redeploying the vessel. In a press conference with his Cypriot counterpart, Nikos Christodoulidis, Maas said it is up to Turkey to create the conditions for talks. Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu criticized the U.S. for not recognizing the rights of Turkish Cypriots. Çavuşoğlu said any partisan statement or action by external forces will only complicate the matter. Turkey says it has killed 3 militants of the Kurdistan Workers' Party in northern Syria near its southern border. The defense ministry said the militants were attempting to infiltrate into the area of Turkey's anti-terror operation. It said Ankara will not allow militants to disrupt peace and security in the Operation Peace Spring zone in northeastern Syria. Since 2016, Turkey has launched a trio of operations across its border into northern Syria. Ankara holds the fighter group responsible for the deaths of some 40,000 people in the more than 30-year terror campaign. The first ever talks between Lebanon and Israel over disputed maritime border have ended inconclusively. Lebanese state media said the meeting broke up after barely an hour. It said the delegations agreed to meet again in 2 weeks. After decades of conflict, Lebanon and Israel agreed this month to negotiate over a long-running sea border row. The dialogue was a push by the U.S. to resolve the bilateral dispute over potentially gas-rich Mediterranean waters. 2 military helicopters brought the Lebanese delegation, led by a military officer, to the meeting. Lebanon has signed an agreement with Germany to rebuild the Beirut naval base, which was destroyed in the port's explosion. Lebanese army said the deal was signed with the German ambassador Andreas Kendall and military commander General Joseph On. Commander On expressed his appreciation for the German government's initiative. He said German soldiers working within the UN interim forces in Lebanon are consolidating the relations between the two armies. Meanwhile, Kindle said Germany stands with the Lebanese army and intends to develop cooperation in the future in multiple fields. Germany's initiative came after two explosions rocked Beirut's port on August the 4th, killing around 190 people. Kyrgyzstan's parliament has once again named Sadir Japarov as prime minister in a repeat vote. President Sooronbay Jeenbekov rejected the first vote that appointed Japarov with doubts of vote rules. Jeenbekov asked the parliament to vote again after MPs chose nationalist politician Sadir Japarov last week. Japarov's supporters freed him from prison last week amid unrest over the disputed parliamentary election. Kyrgyzstan has been gripped by a political crisis since mass protests rejected the results of October 4 election. Pakistan and the UK have held the fifth round of talks on arms control, non-proliferation and disarmament. Pakistan's Director General Arms Control and Disarmament, Mohammad Kamran Akhtar, and the UK's Director Defence and International Security, Samantha Job, held the meeting virtually. In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Ministry said both the sides also discussed global and regional security. It said both Pakistan and the UK expressed commitment to further enhance coordination on multilateral opportunities. The ministry said the two sides agreed to hold the sixth round of consultations next year. In the United Kingdom, Pakistan's armed forces have won an international military drill competition held at the Royal Military Academy. The Pakistan military's media wing said this is the third consecutive year that Pakistan won the pace sticking competition. The event has been held in the UK since 1928, with its history linked to the Royal Regiment of Artillery. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Pakistan, 14 people have lost their lives to COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, with the death toll rising to 6,601. The Health Ministry says 615 people tested positive for the virus overnight. The ministry said there are 8,782 active coronavirus cases in the country. It said out of over 320,000 infections, some 305,000 have recovered. The ministry said more than 140,000 cases have been detected in the Sindh province so far, while Punjab has reported more than 101,000 cases. The number of coronavirus infections has exceeded 38 million worldwide, with over 1,080,000 deaths. The US, India and Brazil together account for more than half of the world's COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, India's death toll has surged to over 110,000, with more than 7.2 million infections. More in this report.
The surging second wave of COVID-19 has jeopardized hopes of an early economic revival, especially for developing countries. Brazil continues to be the worst-hit country in Latin America, while Argentina is also witnessing a steep rise in infections. Struggling to contain the outbreak and sustain its economy, Mexico has announced to vaccinate 116 million of its population by the end of 2021.
With what I just mentioned, if we add COVAX and each one of these, AstraZeneca, Pfizer and CanSino, we will be covering more than 100 million Mexicans. As of today, Mexico is in the same condition as the United States and the European Union and other countries in the world. We've already assured the necessary capacity.
Many countries across Europe have widened scope of restrictions to regain a grip on the resurging pandemic. The Czech Republic has extended school shutdown till November 3rd and restricted all eateries to home deliveries only. The Netherlands has also enforced a partial lockdown, while hospitals in Paris are once again being overwhelmed. Spain's healthcare system is on the ropes as well, as Catalan's medics demand more resources amid rising infections.
We are asking for help because we cannot give people the resources they need to be treated during this COVID pandemic. I mean, we are not treating people as we should in the current circumstances we are facing in this pandemic.
After confirmed instances of recovered patients contracting COVID-19 again, the World Health Organization has dismissed the idea of herd immunity to fight the virus, saying it will only cause suffering and death.
Malaysia's Royal Palace has postponed all meetings for 2 weeks because of new coronavirus curbs. Earlier, the palace cancelled the King's meeting with allies of opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim. In a statement, the King's secretary said the palace will set new dates for the meetings with the party leaders. Yesterday, opposition leader Anwar Ibrahim claimed he presented proof of his parliamentary majority to the King in a meeting. Later, in a statement, the palace said Anwar only submitted a number of supporting lawmakers, not identities. No political party has clearly declared support for the opposition leader so far. U.S. pharmaceutical firm Eli Lilly has paused the trials of COVID-19 vaccine over potential safety concerns. In a statement, Lilly spokesperson Molly McCulley said Data Safety Monitoring Board recommended halt out of caution. McCulley said the firm has applied for emergency use authorization for the antibody drug. Earlier, U.S. President Donald Trump had boasted that Lilly antibody treatment is equivalent to COVID-19 cure. This comes a day after Johnson & Johnson also paused trial of its coronavirus vaccine because a volunteer became sick. The US's AstraZeneca's experimental COVID-19 vaccine is also on hold for over a month after a volunteer in its UK study fell ill. The Executive Board of World Bank has approved $12 billion in funding for COVID-19 stricken developing countries. The new funding aims to finance, purchase and distribute COVID-19 vaccines. In a statement, the bank said the program will include technical support for deploying vaccines at scale. It said the financing plan is part of the $160 billion that the World Bank pledged to provide to developing countries. The statement said the funding will signal drug companies that there will be ample financing for COVID-19 vaccines in these countries. The U.S. will deploy up to 2,500 soldiers in Bulgaria as part of the 10-year defense cooperation roadmap. The agreement was reached during a meeting between Bulgarian Defense Minister Krasimir Karakachnov and his U.S. counterpart Mark Esper in Washington. Karakachnov said the two NATO countries aim at deepening cooperation in the Black Sea region. The American soldiers will be deployed at 4 military bases used by the U.S. in Bulgaria. The Balkan nation has also purchased 8 F-16 Block 70 aircraft from the U.S., which will be delivered in 2024. The biggest World War II bomb ever found in Poland has exploded underwater as Navy divers tried to defuse it. More than 750 people were evacuated from the area where the tall boy bomb was found. Local authorities said no one was injured and no infrastructure damaged. The bomb weighed nearly 5,400 kgs and included 2,400 kilograms of explosives. The bomb was dropped by the British Air Force in 1945 in an attack on a German cruiser. In Thailand, hundreds of protesters clashed with police after 21 people were detained ahead of a new round of anti-government demonstrations. The demonstrators are calling for a new constitution and the removal of Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha. The protesters threw blue paint at officers and demanded the release of the detainees. Breaking a taboo against criticizing the royal family, they shouted at the motorcade of the King Maha Vajiralongkorn. They have also called for the curbs on the powers of the monarchy. a royalist politician, were wrong, condemned the protesters in a Facebook post. Russia has rejected accusations that it launched a cyber attack against the Norwegian parliament in August. In a statement, the Russian embassy in Oslo said the allegations are a deliberate provocation and harm bilateral ties. It said Norway has not presented any evidence of its accusations. Earlier, Norwegian Foreign Minister Ina Eriksen Søreide said Russia was behind the cyber attack. In August, Norway said hackers attacked the parliament's email system, gaining access to some lawmakers' messages. Twitter has suspended several fake accounts claiming to be African Americans who support US President Donald Trump. The social media giant said the accounts broke its rules on spam and platform manipulation. It said it may suspend additional accounts if they were found to be violating its policies. Twitter said most accounts impersonated real Americans in their profiles, with some of them having tens of thousands of followers. Social media platforms have ramped up checks ahead of the November presidential election in the US. Russia's Soyuz MS-17 spacecraft with 2 Russians and an American on board has docked with the International Space Station. The Expedition 64 crew departed from Baikonur Space Center, Kazakhstan. The mission is first to use a cutting-edge rendezvous scheme. It slashed the journey to just 3 hours under the super short flight program. One of the crew members, Kate Rubins, is a NASA microbiologist who became the first person to sequence DNA in space. More than 150 professional rescuers, an air squadron of 8 Mi-8 helicopters, 4 planes, as well as 18 vehicles took part in the launch preparations. The crew is expected to deliver equipment which will allow to detect and eliminate an air leak. Saudi Arabia and Russia have urged the members of Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries to stick to the agreed production cuts. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman and President Vladimir Putin reviewed efforts to balance the oil market on a call. Saudi state media said both the leaders discussed the renewed pressure on energy prices due to COVID-19's second wave. It said Salman and Putin also discussed boosting global oil economy by balancing the supply and demand. The IMF says a resurgence of COVID-19 cases and low prospects for a vaccine will have a severe impact on world economy. In a briefing, IMF chief economist Geeta Gopinath said over 90 million people are likely to fall into extreme poverty this year. The International Monetary Fund warned of a growing recovery gap between the rich and the poor. Gopinath said growing restrictions on trade and investment also pose risks to the economic forecast for 2021. She said the pandemic is not over and there could be even worse outcomes. Gopinath said some $12 trillion in fiscal support from the governments had helped limit the damage.
Now, except for China, where output is expected to exceed 2019 levels this year, output in both advanced economies and emerging and developing economies are projected to stay below 2019 levels well into 2021.
European stocks are cautiously trading higher as coronavirus concerns have weighed on global markets. European stock 600 has gained with banks adding while the travel and the leisure sector slid. London's FTSE 100 has edged up over 0.5%. In Italy, the FTSE MID has added close to 1%. The CAC 40 in Paris and Frankfurt's DAX have also edged up marginally. Earlier, most Asian stocks declined with the exception of Japan's Nikkei 225. Ukraine have stunned Spain with a shocking 1-0 win in the UEFA Nations League. This is Ukraine's first ever victory against the 2010 World Cup winners. Ukraine took the lead against the run of play in the 76th minute. Victor surprised David De Gea by firing home a skimmer from outside the box. Ukraine had lost their last 3 outings after losing 6 key players as they tested positive for COVID-19. The result has given Ukraine a chance of making it to the top of Group 4 with 2 games remaining. This marks Spain's first defeat in 2 years, even though they still lead with 7 points. Germany are in second place with 6 points and Ukraine in the third. Time to take a look at the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.